Hello, welcome to this episode of Hampton Roads Business Live. My name is Rory Graham and I'm your host, and today we have the pleasure of having with us Dick Nottingham from Nottingham Life Settlements. Welcome.
Thank you, Rory.
Glad to have you in today. Why don't we just start off with you telling us what is a life settlement? I think people have probably heard the term, but they might not be sure exactly what that means.
Rory, life settlements have been around now for over 20 years. And a life settlement describes a transaction between the owner of a life insurance policy who no longer wants it or needs it, and who decides to sell that policy to an institutional buyer, such as a bank, who buys it as an investment with the intention of holding it and keeping it in force and ultimately collecting the death benefit.
Okay, what's your experience with life settlements, or how did you get involved with this?
Well, Rory, I've been a financial service professional in Hampton Roads for 41 years now, and my focus has always been working with high net worth clients, typically business owners, retired business owners, helping them with some fairly sophisticated life insurance needs. And 17 years ago, I got involved in helping two of my clients sell two term life insurance policies that they no longer had need for. And so I've been doing this now for 17 years and have had the good fortune to become known as the guru, the go-to guy in Hampton Roads, Virginia for life settlements.
Well, you must be good at it.
Well, I am.
Okay, good.
Not too many things I'm good at, but that's one of them.
That's one of them, okay. All right, now, are life settlements safe?
Absolutely, absolutely. Today, 44 states, Virginia being one, have very stringent laws on the books to protect the consumer, and in this case, the consumer is the seller of the life insurance policy. For example, one of the many laws that Virginia has that protects consumers is the 15-day right of rescission. And that means that if you decided to sell a life insurance policy and we found you an offer that you wanted to accept and you did accept it, you would have up to 15 days after you actually receive the proceeds of the sale in which to change your mind for any reason, reverse the whole process, and take the policy back over. So there are many laws to protect sellers and everyone who's involved in the process. Myself as a broker, the institutional buyers, all of us have to be licensed and approved by the states in which we operate.
So let's talk about those buyers for a second. Who are these buyers?
When I say institutional buyers, Rory, I'm referring to organizations, firms that have large amounts of money to invest that are looking for investments that are not correlated to the stock or bond markets. I'm talking about banks, pension plans, endowment funds, hedge funds. Berkshire Hathaway, owned by Warren Buffett, is a big buyer of life insurance policies. So is Bank America, Maple Bank of Canada, Royal Bank of Scotland. So institutional buyers that have, in many cases, hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars to invest in buying policies that are already in force.
Okay, now why would someone want to sell their policy? I mean, they've got an insurance policy, they've been paying on it for years, and what causes them to want to sell it?
Good question, Rory. Many times, people reach a point in their lives when they no longer need or want or can afford a life insurance policy. An example, just give you a few of ones that I've actually completed for people. Person buys a life insurance policy to protect his wife. He has no other heirs. His wife predeceases him. He suddenly doesn't have anyone that he needs to protect anymore. And he'd like to have extra money for himself to enjoy for the remainder of his life. Another example, someone who's bought a large life insurance policy and put it into a trust for the purpose of paying federal estate tax. However, due to recent tax law changes in the federal estate tax laws, he doesn't even have an estate tax problem anymore. So therefore, the reason that he purchased the policy no longer exists. He may be very tired of paying large premiums, and he's ready to no longer have the policy. So anybody that, for whatever their reasons, because they don't need it or want it, or they can't afford it, if they are considering getting rid of that policy by terminating it or lapsing it or cashing it in, a life settlement is potentially a very, very good alternative for them.
Okay. Now, I've seen spots or commercials for life settlements, and from several different companies, and that I understand from talking to you earlier that probably isn't always your best option.
Certainly is
To
not.
do is just to call one company and see what they're going to give you, but you have a better option for people with your company.
Certainly so.
Can you tell us about that?
Certainly. Rory, I represent only the seller. My client is the seller, and it's my job to get him or her the largest possible value that I can for that policy. So, if that person doesn't know about me or Nottingham Life Settlements and they simply pick up the phone and call Coventry, for example, then Coventry is going to learn about their health and they're going to learn about the policy, and based upon that, they're going to make an offer. It wouldn't surprise me if that offer is attractive by comparison to what the cash surrender value is. It might be double what the surrender value is, and that might entice that seller to say, gee whiz, this is a great deal, I'll take it. But what that seller doesn't realize is that Coventry in that case is probably lowballing him and making an offer much less than they would actually be willing to pay to acquire that policy. When you work with Nottingham Life Settlements, what we do is we gather your medical history. You don't have to have an insurance physical, but we gather your medical history, and from that we obtain a couple of life expectancy reports. We also get information from the issuing insurance company about the policy itself. Namely, how much premium is it going to take per year to keep it going until your death. Armed with that information about your health, your life expectancy, and the policy itself, we then send that information to every licensed institutional buyer operating in Virginia. Obviously, we're in Virginia. We're licensed in numerous states, so we would present that information to every licensed buyer in the state in which you live, and we would ask for an offer to buy. And when one offer is made, we not only notify you, the seller, of that offer, but we also publicize that offer to every other contending buyer. And we ask for a higher offer. And when we get a higher offer, we repeat that process. So through this process of creating this auction, it is an auction. We drive the price up, each time getting an offer, making you, the client, aware of it, until finally we get the highest and best offer and close the auction.
Kind of like eBay.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll give you an example. Years ago, we helped an 85-year-old lady sell a large policy. It was a $5 million policy.
Wow.
The surrender value was $141,000, so she could have cashed it in for $141,000, but instead we got offers. And the first offer we got was from Coventry, and they offered $963,000 to buy that policy. That's a huge improvement over $141,000.
Sure.
However, we kept getting offers. Coventry's final offer was for $1,930,000, and they did not get to buy the policy.
They weren't the highest.
A higher offer came in. So if you're interested in selling a policy and you want to shoot yourself in the foot, just call one buyer and ask them to make an offer.
All right, so what is your process, the process someone would go to or go through with your company if they were interested, and what does that cost them?
Well, the process costs them absolutely nothing. They're obligated to nothing. Here's how it works. When I'm contacted by someone who's interested in knowing more about a life settlement and how it might benefit them, the first thing I want to do is I want to involve the insured, the policy owner, if that's a different person or entity, the beneficiary, the attorney of the insured, if the insured would like to have that person involved, and also their tax professional, their accountant. I want to get everybody involved in a face-to-face meeting or at least a telephone conference call for me to explain the entire process and make sure that everyone knows what we plan to do and what our hoped for outcome is going to be. So once everyone knows how it works, then we move forward. And here's that process. First, we gather the medical history of the insured. Again, the insured does not have to have any kind of a physical exam. We just get their medical history. We submit that to 2 life expectancy companies, There are 5 of them in the country. And we get 2 life expectancy reports from those companies detailing how long they forecast the insured is going to live. We also get detailed information from the issuing insurance company about that policy so that a potential buyer would know how much premium it will take to keep it going. We then provide all of that information to every licensed institutional buyer in the state of Virginia and begin that auction process. If at the end of that process we have obtained an offer that the seller wants to accept, we at that time have a meeting and they sign all the closing documents, much like a real estate transaction. Mm-hmm. We then send those closing documents, those signed documents, to the buyer for their review. They at that time give an escrow agent, typically a national bank, the actual money that's going to be paid to the seller. Once the money is in the hands of the escrow agent, at that time the escrow agent will send paperwork to the home office of the insurance company to change the ownership and the beneficiary to the buyer. Once that owner and beneficiary change has been confirmed by the escrow agent, they release the purchase price, they release the funds to the seller within 3 business days. The seller gets their choice of a certified check sent by Federal Express or a wire transfer of the funds to the bank of their choice. And once they have the money, then they have that 15-day period of rescission in which to cancel it if for any reason they choose to. And I've never had someone be dissatisfied or act upon that rescission period.
And all of that costs nothing for the person.
Correct.
That's amazing.
But clearly we get paid. So let me explain that. We work on a contingency basis. This whole process generally takes probably anywhere from 60 to 120 days from the day that I first meet my client to the day that they get their check. And during this time, as you might imagine, we have an awful lot of work to do gathering all this data and then creating and managing this auction process. If we don't bring a client an offer that they choose to accept, then we worked for free. The client doesn't pay us anything. We bear all the costs of gathering the medical history, getting the life expectancy reports, and everything else. But if, on the other hand, we do bring a client an offer that they accept, we receive a portion of that proceeds. And typically, what we receive is about 30% of the offer. Now, if you think about it, if you are our client, it must be reassuring to you to know that we are doing an awful lot of work on your behalf, and we're not going to charge you anything unless we're successful. And the more we get for you, the more we get. So certainly we're incentivized to do the best job we can.
I was just going to follow up with that and say,
Sure.
yeah, it's to your benefit.
And when you think about 30%, imagine this. Suppose that you had been wronged by someone and you sought to go through a legal process and try to recover damages from them. If you went to an attorney and you asked that attorney to take your case on a contingency basis, meaning he doesn't earn anything unless he wins the award for you, then typically you're going to pay that attorney anywhere from 1/3 to 40% of what he gets for you. When I'm taking 30%, I think that's a very reasonable compensation, and I've never had anybody complain about it.
Okay, and speaking of how much people get, how much does the tax people get? What are the tax consequences of this thing?
Very good question, Rory. In 2013, the IRS issued Revenue Ruling 2009-13, which very specifically spells out the taxation, and it's pretty simple. First of all, let's suppose that I have, over the years of my lifetime of having this policy, let's just suppose that I've paid $100,000 in premiums, just as a round number. That is my basis in the policy. If I sell that policy for $300,000, then I get the first $100,000 back tax-free. The next $200,000 is taxed as capital gains. So, very favorable tax treatment, and the Internal Revenue Service is very clear about how the taxation will be.
Okay, all right. And so then let me just kind of close this out by saying if someone is interested, then the first thing I would assume they're going to do would be to give you a call. Of course, we're going to have your contact information and all that on the screen.
Sure.
But that's the first thing to do, is to give you a call to set up a consultation to see if they're a candidate for this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're delighted to talk with them, answer any and every question they have. We're more than happy to include any other of their trusted advisors, their attorney, their accountant, anyone that they want to take part in that conversation. We welcome that. We are very prideful of the fact that we have full disclosure. Our process is very transparent. Been doing this, as I said, for 17 years. I've never had a complaint. I've never had a dissatisfied customer. And I'm proud to say that today in Hampton Roads, there are an awful lot of attorneys and accountants and trust officers that refer clients to me when they think a life settlement might be in the best interest of the client.
Okay. All right. So if you are a candidate or a potential candidate and would like more information, you can call Mr. Nottingham, and the contact information is at the end of this video and at the bottom of this page. And he would be glad to have a consultation with you, or you might know someone who might be able to benefit from these important financial services. So I thank you very much for coming in. I wish you a great deal of success.
Thank you very much, Roy. It was
All
a
right.
pleasure to be with you today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.